Stop hoping for your business to grow and start mastering the formula for success that every entrepreneur needs to grow their business. Join us for 5+1 Mastery, where every week we go in depth on how to grow your business the right way. Learn more at 5+1mastery.com.
From a business owner's perspective, what can you do to help that person? Because no matter who you are or where you're at in your life, we all need help with something. And the real inquisitive, really focused, what I call ripplers, that are out there building their network correctly are always asking that question, how can I help? You do it in a way that says, hey, look, I'm here because I want to be here. I want to contribute in some way, shape, or form to your life, to your success, to your business. And when you're putting other people first before you put your own business agenda, out there on the table, it's amazing how that relationship grows quicker and more authentic.
I'm your host, Chaz Wilson. I bring you successful entrepreneurs, add valuable wisdom to your journey, and help you succeed. Welcome to Connect, Share, and Prosper.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Connect, Share, Prosper. I'm your host, Chaz Wilson, and I am excited today for I know we're going to have just a fabulous in-depth conversation on something that's very near and dear to me, and it's something I'm passionate about as well. So this is going to be a fun, intense conversation on this. But let me introduce my guest today, and remember, every Monday, noon Central, I'm going to bring guests like today to you. So make sure you join in, subscribe, get notified to our Master Networks Facebook page, because that's where we post this every Monday, noon Central live. It comes to you there. So let me introduce my guest. Steve Harper has become a sought-after speaker and business strategist because of his strong insights into the power of connection. So anybody that's followed us for a long time understands those phrases right away are near and dear to us. And so he teaches how to deepen and strengthen connections through a process called rippling. Steve has always maintained a unique focus on developing strong, long-lasting relationships with his clients, prospects, and employees. That system is represented in his book, The Ripple Effect, and through his speaking engagements and customized speaking and workshop programs. Everyone, please help me welcome today Steve Harper to Connect, Share, Prosper. Welcome, Steve. So I want to jump into a lot of stuff in the book, but before, I'm kind of holding myself back, right, before we do that. So before we get into rippling and what that all is and this power of connection, how did that develop for you? Like, was there a moment where you're like, gosh, the power of connection, the power of relationships is the key and the process to making things move?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I started my first business venture, my first kind of foray into entrepreneurship at 22, and started my company in Austin. And I moved here, not well thought out plan. I knew nobody. And so one of the things that I recognized pretty quickly is that I needed to try and get acclimated to the local business environment, build my network as quickly as possible. And something that most people are pretty shocked to learn is I'm naturally introverted and shy, which is not a recipe for success when you're an entrepreneur trying to build a business, right? So I had to step outside of that comfort zone to figure out how to connect and engage with people. But what I recognized pretty early on was the traditional forms of networking where you're going up and you've got your 30-second elevator pitch and you've got you're working the room trying to, obtain as many business cards as you can get and give as many as you can hand out. Wasn't working. What I really found for me was that I needed to try and figure out a different approach, a different mousetrap for me, because I was introverted and shy. That process wasn't working. And so I recognized pretty early that I needed to change my strategy, do some things a little bit differently. And so I started really trying to engage people at a different level, not necessarily starting off with that question that everybody gets asked at a networking event, so what do you do? But really try and figure out what brought people to those events, how long they'd been in Austin, where I was at the time, and ultimately, what they were about aside from the business agenda. And that opened up opportunities for deeper, more meaningful conversation.
Man, so our audience, I'm sure they're like the antennas are going up on all of the stuff you're talking about. The interesting thing, so I want to talk about the introvert thing first, because interestingly enough, we've had several people on here, successful entrepreneurs who've said similarly that they are introverts. So for those of you who identify as an introvert listening to this, you too can be successful. That's only a story you're telling yourself that could potentially be an objection. But I want to throw something at you and see if this is accurate. This is a theory I have about introvert and extrovert. I think, this is my opinion, that introvert and extrovert is not exactly as what we think that we've been told that it is. Meaning this. I think in the past we've been told that an introvert is somebody who's more shy and an extrovert's more outgoing. And I actually think it's the way that we get energy. Meaning I have partners in business who literally need to be in front of people all the time to get their energy, where I tend to be somebody more that I need to go have some quiet space to get my energy. But when I need to be in front of people, I can definitely be in front of them and do what I need to do, but it can drain me, whereas some people get filled by that. And I think for me, that's the introvert extrovert thing. How does that line up for you? Test my theory on that.
Yeah, I think you're actually very accurate in that regard. In that, I do think people that consider themselves a bit more introverted, depending on the environments that they may be networking, they can find that sometimes exhausting, but they also get their buzz from that. So
Yes.
they, to a certain degree, it's just maybe not to the scale like your partners do, where they have to be out doing it all the time. Introverts, I think, in a lot of ways, number one, I don't think it's an excuse or a crutch that people can get away with.
Yes.
I think we come out of the womb as natural, sort of intuitive individuals. We're always curious about other people, but some people are a little bit more outward in terms of their approach about getting engaged or starting a conversation or just jumping right into the deep end of the pool. Whereas I think introverts tend to be a bit more observable, right? They try and watch, they try and get the lay of the land. They tend to speak when they have something to share, but they're not the ones that are necessarily always the life of the party, so to speak, but they tend to be the ones that pull the most out of the party. And so I find similar to you in that I have to go off and be on myself to kind of, by myself to coordinate and kind of recharge. But then when I am ready to get involved and get engaged, I'm prepared and ready for it, but I tend to have more powerful connections than someone that's just naturally working the room.
So let's talk about that, because there's definitely a difference. I think back to a time, probably 15 years ago, going to a, quote, networking event. It was like a social hour thing. And I remember walking in the room, and there was like these 3 or 4 or 5, high top tables with some hors d'oeuvres and stuff. And like literally these groups had like circled around it. So you could, first of all, you could like, physically they made it clear you're not allowed over here, right? Much like a lunchroom when you're in school, like, when you're a little kid, right? They've isolated it off. But that being said, like, it became clear there was people who were just there like speed dating, handing out cards, moving through the room. And now it's like, you get on apps and it's swipe left, swipe right. I mean, I don't know how that works. I've been married 20 years. But I see these people that like, it's quick decision, and they treat networking like that. It's transactional. It's like move, move, move. So at some point you became aware of a system that you use called rippling. It's interesting. I don't know if you're familiar with our bond method, but we'll see I bet there's some similarities in how they line up. But tell us about rippling. How did you discover this process, and then tell us about it?
Well, I think actually rippling is any action you take, big or small, which makes an impact on another person. So it's exactly like your
Perfect.
Audience might think. It's casting that stone. The ripple, ripples out the stone. The action that you take, you never know how deep or how big of an impact it will make, but those ripples always ripple out, and they always ripple back to you in ways that you can't imagine. And what I've found in the networking environment, when I am coming at a relationship or a connection with an inquisitive mind, and I'm trying to learn what I can about the individual that I'm talking to, how they're got into the business that they got into, or what really excites them, what they're passionate about, what brought them to the town that we might happen to be in. All these things are opportunities for you to learn things about them. And I call those connection points. Those connection points become those little bite-sized morsels of information that you learn about individuals that make them unique to you. It's not their job responsibility. It's not their job title. It's these things that you pick up. Could be their, huge Dallas Cowboy fans. Could be they're super passionate about a nonprofit. It could be these things that really make them who they are as individuals, which really helps you establish some footholds for ways that you can either find similarities or invest additional efforts to go forward to ask more questions to learn more about who they are. And I know for people that are with a business agenda, they're like, well, who's got time for that? Who doesn't have time for it, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we're in a relationship-driven economy, and if you're not taking the time and extending that effort proactively, you're probably never going to build the kinds of connections or build the type of network you really want. So that's how that arrived, right? It's all about action. It's figuring out how to apply the things that we learn about the people in a way that actually allows them to know, hey, that person listened to me. That person really got what I was saying. Or, post event, 2, 3, 4 weeks, a month go by, and you bring back that one thing that you talked about at that event, people automatically get transformed back to that moment of time where they met you, and it sets you apart from the other people they've come in contact with.
So it's interesting. That was going to be my next question to ask you is, okay, so I've got that. I've built that common interest thing then where we can build from. I've got those connection points, as you say. Where do I take it from there? Like where do I go from there? You know, I meet you, we made these connections. We just found out we're both in Texas right now. Like, okay, so where do I take it from there in a networking sense, especially as a business owner?
Absolutely. From a business owner's perspective, what can you do to help that person? Because no matter who you are or where you're at in your life, we all need help with something. And the real inquisitive, really focused, what I call ripplers that are out there building their network correctly are always asking that question, how can I help you? And you do it in a way that says, hey, look, I'm here because I want to be here. I want to contribute in some way, shape, or form to your life, to your success, to your business. And when you're putting other people first before you put your own business agenda, out there on the table, it's amazing how that relationship grows quicker and more authentically.
Love it. So I'm gonna throw something at you because I'm writing all these notes, right? And our audience that's listening to this is gonna find this like, so there's so much congruency in what you're saying to what. For those who are familiar with master networks, we talk about BOND. Our BOND method is an acronym, and the first is build on a common interest, and that's exactly what you described. Whether it be football fans of the same team, or hey, we're from the same state, or we're at their same event, or whatever, you build on those common interests, which are your connection points. And then we go to O, which is occupation exploration. Then it's like, tell me about your business. But again, you can't go, you've got to put them first. You've got to build on that common interest, then go to the occupation. Then we go to needs discovery, which is how can I help you? Right? So I hope you guys are following this. This is the process we teach. And Steve is like literally, we're saying it differently in some ways, but we're down the same path, yet we understand that this works when you're building relationships and not trying to be transactional with it. And then, of course, the D in BOND for us is develop opportunities is the last. And they could be an opportunity for you, or it could be, hey, you said you need this, and I know the person that can connect you, that I can connect you with, right? And that's valuable.
The interesting thing about that is people always look for that quick home run, right, when they connect with people, especially in networking environments. So what I tend to find is that, the quote unquote power networkers, when they actually look at their network, they don't have relationships with really anybody. And and if they are connected, those are really deep, shallow connections as opposed to deeper, more meaningful relationships. And it's the meaningful relationships that's where the payoff is. And like you said, when you start to get to that level of trust and you can create opportunity for you to both jointly develop something, then that's where the success begins to take hold. You'll build better relationships and find better, longer term and more loyal customers when you do it this way. You'll have people that constantly look out for whatever your business might be, because somebody could be at another networking event or at a party and say, I need that X, Y, and Z. And they go, I've got the person specifically, because you've taken the time to lay the foundation and build that relationship in a way that makes the most sense.
But Steve, that's also the challenge, is taking the time. And we talked about that. We just kind of glazed over that. But don't you think that is where that becomes the challenge for most entrepreneurs, is that the time is always, there's a pull and a struggle for time constantly. So how do I develop enough time?
Yeah, so I coach a lot of people around this process. Everybody has the time. They're just not understanding or recognizing that the time is there. So I always tell people that on Sunday evening, set a goal for just 1 or 2 connections that you want to make through that week, whoever it is, right? Going back through your LinkedIn, whether it be going through your address book, the connections you've made over the past quarter or the past year, your customers, and just set an intention to reach out and connect with just 2 of them. Because what will happen is, yeah, you do have a lot of strains on your time. There are a lot of demands. But the reality is, if you make this a priority and you establish it as a habit, what happens is you will find that you will actually be able to do this with a lot more regularity and a lot more reliability. And the payoffs will come back, which means you'll see that benefit. And therefore, you'll come back and put the emphasis and the time to do it all the time. So 1 or 2 connections per week becomes easier to do 3 or 4, and it just becomes a habit. And so when I work with my clients, I tend to tell them, you've got to schedule this like it's just the most important meeting that you possibly have in your agenda for the upcoming week. And you have to honor that, because building a relationship will take time and it'll take effort. And here's the thing, your viewers will probably recognize and understand this. You're the one doing most of the heavy lifting almost every time.
Yes.
But that's okay, because that investment will come back and it will pay off. That ripple will ripple back to you eventually.
The interesting thing that you just said that I was writing down is you have to schedule it. It has to be part of what you do. And if you think about, I'm going to ask everyone listening to think about this. If you think about the most significant things you have in your life, they're probably because of a relationship. So if you know that that's true and accurate, and you believe that, then if you want more significant things, you're going to have to take time to build more relationships. It's just the bottom line. You're going to have to do that. And so then why not take the time? Like, what's more important, taking the time to build that relationship, or, building the next ad or the next thing? Like, especially if you're a solopreneur and you're doing all of those things, you think, well, I have to do those. Yeah, but building relationships is more important than that, and you have to prioritize it that way. That's what I'm hearing you say, correct?
Absolutely. Well, when you do that, those relationships that turn into professional relationships tend to be more profitable. They tend to be ones that you can count on long term. Your competitors are less likely to be able to unhook that business, because that relationship is solid to that individual, and they don't want to lose that either. But here's the key. You don't have to grow your business as aggressively as the shotgun approach that most people do, because if you have people and you turn them into your evangelist, they become that person that says, I've got a guy or a gal that you need to talk to. Business flows because of the connections that they also have within their own networks. And if you take the time to build it correctly, business just flows to you, as opposed to you having to go out and constantly hunt for it.
That's so true and so accurate. We've had events where the way that we've interacted with our speakers, to the point where they want to come back, and we don't even have to honestly, we could make 6 phone calls and have 6 speakers, because the way we treat them, where they say, hey, most places I go, I'm in and out, they pay me and I'm done. And it's like, we treat it differently. We treat it with that relationship feeling. Guys, we're listening to Steve Harper on today's episode of Connect, Share, Prosper. I know you have an offer for people. I want to make sure that we get that out there and how they can connect with you, and then we'll jump to a few other questions. So what are you offering our folks today, and how do they find it?
Yeah, so you can learn more about my work at ripplecentral.com, but we have a program called the Virtual Ripple Coaching Program. You can find it at virtualripplecoaching.com. We're offering $100 off that program. I actually have a lot of coaching clients that I work with. I find that a lot of people that are, especially entrepreneurs, newly minted business leaders, they're trying to figure out their way in the world. And so one of the things that I saw over the course of the last few years is more and more people coming to me looking for coaching, but weren't necessarily committed to a one-on-one coaching relationship, or didn't necessarily want to make a financial commitment just yet because they didn't know if coaching was right for them. I'm here to say that coaching is, 100% directly responsible for my success. Always has been. I value the coaches and mentors I've had along the way. And what I did was I created a program very similar to one I did for a big financial services company that really liked my leadership approach that we were working on an emerging leaders program for. But I took that approach because they wanted to take it over to Europe, and they obviously had time zone challenges, and there was a different way that they consume training content over in Europe than here. And they wanted to do it kind of on a, choose your own adventure, kind of your own pace kind of perspective. And it was super successful. I thought, maybe that plan could work here. And so we created this program as a mechanism to give you 90 days. There's multiple sessions throughout each month. We deliver it in private podcast plus written transcript. And there's a few other little surprises along the way. But the program is yours to keep for life. Even though it's 90 days, it covers 3 specific areas that I know almost every one of my coaching clients deal with, whether you're grappling with something personally or professionally. So I know it has a big potential application for anyone listening or watching today.
That's awesome. All right, so first of all, we'll make sure we put those in the show notes for those of you watching that want to take advantage of that. I'd encourage you to do so. I couldn't agree more on the coaching and mentoring thing. It's been just the key to success. And, it's interesting that the most expensive way to learn a lesson is to make the mistake yourself. It's like people have already been down the path, learn from what they're they're teaching and sharing. And yes, they said, well, gosh, that costs money. Trust me, it's less expensive and the investment is greater to just pay and learn the lesson than to have to learn it the hard way through all the money. And I've spent so much money on mistakes. Like, I should just pay somebody who's already done it, right? Just
absolutely.
Yep.
Well, kind of to tie back to what you started with, right? How did this all come about? When I first moved to Austin and I didn't know anybody, one of the things that I found was I went to and looked at people that were successful in businesses that weren't even related to mine. And I wasn't prospecting them for opportunity for my venture, but I was actually curious about how they had found their success and what made them successful. So I actually started reaching out and saying, hey, look, would you be willing to have coffee or lunch? Allow me to pick your brain. I'm new to town. I'd love to know, what events I need to be going to, what you think is important to put my time and energy and focus on. And I had, out of 10 entrepreneurs that I reached out to, I had 10 responses that all said, absolutely, I'm happy to welcome you to the town. I would help you get acclimated to the community. And it was overwhelmingly positive. And out of those 10, I'm proud to say that I'm still friends with all 10 of them. And that was 26 years ago.
Smart. And I want to point out a distinction. I hope everyone listens to this, that you're taking notes, you're hearing what Steve said. I really want you to see the distinction. What the approach you made right from the beginning to build on the common interest, because frankly, you didn't know if you had anything in common with these people. But the thing is that people want to give value. Most people want to provide value. You opened the door for them to give you value by saying, hey, I'm new to the area. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to sharing with me who I should connect with. You didn't come in saying, hey, I'm new to the area and here's some value I could bring you. You actually opened the door for them to give you value. So I'll give you an example of that. A gentleman's been reaching out. A lot of people will say, hey, I want to get time with Chaz. And my assistant, she does a phenomenal job of sorting through a lot of that's tough. I don't envy that opportunity she has. But a gentleman reached out and said, hey, I'm writing my first book. It's about to be published. I have two things. One, I'd like to interview him for the book. And number two, I would love it if he'd be willing to share best practices on how to sell my book. And immediately that jumped to the top because it's the time I'm going to spend with somebody is me being able to give value. He knows I'm a person that wants to give value. You did the same thing. And I think that's really smart for people when they want to step out, is not come at the, how could I share with you what I have? But, if I was reaching out to you, Steve, I'd be saying, hey, I see you've got this book, The Ripple Effect. I'm wondering if you would, take a few minutes and share with me how I could use that to grow my business. Now, yes, you have programs that you sell that for, et cetera, but that kind of introduction feels better for you than me saying, hey, I'd like to talk to you about what I do.
Absolutely. Oh, right. Without question. People inherently want to share their expertise, whatever that might be, and most people fail to ask that. When people are cold calling or doing, whatever they do to do their business development efforts, like you exactly said, they're coming with their hand out saying, look what I have to offer, instead of understanding really what they can learn from that person and try a different approach. And so I think it's absolutely critical. And especially in today's world when, attention is a nanosecond, you have to do something to differentiate yourself. But that strategy, believe it or not, has continued to serve me and does into multiple ventures. Obviously, Ripple's one big aspect of what I do, but I have two other software companies that I own and manage. I never expected at this point in my career to be a software entrepreneur, but I am, and I'm confident in what I'm doing because I've gone out and done and established relationships along the lines of expertise or with expertise that I really needed to be successful in it. And so these strategies continue to work even today in the attention challenged economy we're in.
So let me transition to that. Right now we're in this interesting time. We'll kind of bring it full circle. We're in this interesting time where in a lot of areas people can't get together in person right now, right? Or there's restrictions in how they can do it. Not that they can't, but and networking is very much a contact sport. And so what advice would you give people? What strategy, what would you say right now is something they could do, people listening, that they could deploy to go out and make more connections right now in this environment?
Yeah, well, it may not necessarily be more connections, but better connections. I think maybe the approach that I would take, and I've told a lot of people since this COVID situation has kind of changed our environments pretty drastically, is go back through the network and the connections that you've already made and figure out who needs to hear from me. And the number one connection point that we all share right now is we don't know what the hell's going on in the world with, how long this is going to last, what it's going to do to our businesses. But I will say we all have uncertainty and fear as a commonality. And so reaching out to people that are important to you to say, hey, I wanted to check in just to see how things are going is one of the best things you could be doing right now with your day, because it's not only going to further cement why they do business with you or why they're glad to be connected with you by way of your network or their network, but really it shows that you are different than everybody else because you're reaching out and actually connecting, and in a time where I think people are desperate for that connection.
So true.
And it's just one of the strategies that I think people are underutilizing right now. And let's face it, many of us have more time on our hands and have the ability to do it. So why not take advantage?
I love that. What a great point. I think you've shared some really, really powerful things today. I am going to point out, you and I have a lot of similarities. I think you're a professional fidgeter. I had a paperclip. I saw you had a fidget spinner in your hand during this episode. So my wife's always teasing me. She's like, you always have something in your hands you're fidgeting with. And this, that was before the legitimate. You've moved up. You're like professional. I'm playing with a paperclip the entire time. No, I know it's great. That's my point. I'm pointing it out. Like, see, that's why I wanted at the beginning. I said to the team, I'm like, let's pull the camera partially because then, right, they can't see I'm fidgeting with the paperclip.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I always find, and I had somebody give me advice a long time ago because I never really wanted to be a professional speaker, but I actually became one because I'm passionate about this topic and I love sharing it with anybody that'll listen. But you actually always have to have an anchor. And so I use an anchor, whether it be a fidget spinner, paperclip, holding something in my hand, basically to remind you that you're anchored somewhere so that you know exactly where to start from and where to go. And so I think it's kind of key. There's probably some Freudian complex there relative to it, but who knows?
Right.
It works for me. It's obviously working for you.
It's working for both of us, so we'll keep going with it. Steve, man, love the episode today. Appreciate all the wisdom you shared with our group. Guys, make sure you go out and get the Ripple Effect. Connect with Steve. We'll put that in the show notes. You can connect with him. Really powerful message today. I know time goes fast, but I think you were able to deliver some really effective things for people in what's going on right now for them to really make better connections and deeper connections right now. So, Steve, I really appreciate you being on the episode today.
Well, thank you so much, Chaz. It was an honor to be here, and I really appreciate it. Look forward to getting to know you better as well.
Yeah, likewise. Guys, remember, every Monday, noon Central, I bring successful entrepreneurs like Steve who are going to share with you the ups, the downs, the ins, the outs, and the things that they need to that you need to deploy right now in this timely environment of opportunity to make sure you're taking the best of that. So join us every Monday, noon Central, on the Master Network's Facebook page for episodes just like this, and we'll see you on the next episode of Connect, Share, Prosper. Be well.
Stop hoping for your business to grow and start mastering the formula for success that every entrepreneur needs to grow their business. Join us for 5+1 Mastery, where every week we go in depth on how to grow your business the right way. Learn more at 5+1mastery.com.